Hi everybody, welcome to my next video. This one's going to be kind of long, so don't say you weren't warned. Well, anyway, this, and I want to actively encourage everybody, if you haven't seen the videos that I'm talking about, I am including this video and those videos on the restaurant reviews for 2012, and I actively encourage you to watch that playlist that I have here. And it'll make a lot more sense when you're watching it, alright? But anyway, I'm going to rehash all of the restaurant reviews that I've done over the last 12 months of 2012. Okay, well, for starters, the first video on that playlist that I've got that I'm talking about here is a tipping video. I just wanted to share that with everybody on this playlist of the restaurant reviews and on the restaurant tipping playlist. So, like, if you feel like watching both playlists, I strongly recommend it. The next video was my first actual, quote-unquote, official restaurant review, and that was at the York Street Cafe. Now, that actually, Tony and I went there in February and ate. I mean, we actually didn't go anywhere in, excuse me, January and ate for some reason. I forget what. Just stuff was going on. But yeah, Tony and I ate at the York Street Cafe back in February and enjoyed it. We had a good time. It just made me sad because, like, the alumni, the English literature alumni group hasn't had a meeting since, there at the York Street Cafe since Dr. Miller passed away. Excuse me. I'm trying to get over a cold. Sinus infection cold. But, yeah, it's like we were in there and we were talking about it, had a good time. Then the second restaurant review I did was the first update on Guys and Dolls. Back in February, they were open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Wednesday. And then all of a sudden they weren't open for like a spell, and then we went in there once and they were just serving appetizers. They weren't serving like food. Excuse me. And we were just, no, forget it. And we left. The third restaurant review that I did was Rancho Grande. I have to say, Tony loves eating Mexican food. Hang on a second. Sorry. I don't know why all of a sudden I just started choking on I don't know what. But yeah, anyway, Tony likes Rancho Grande. I mean, it's a good restaurant. The first time I went in there, I was by myself, and it was like the afternoon or whatever. And I went in there and ate, and enjoyed myself immensely. I mean, and it's like the staff is very nice. They've been just amazingly nice every time I've went in there. And I've had a great experience every time. I mean, they're consistently good every time. And they're reasonably priced. Not to mention they're a lot cleaner than some of the other Mexican restaurants I've went through. The next restaurant review that I did was an update on Renero's Pizza. Well, what happened is Tony and I kind of sort of halfway know the owner. And he, had told us initially, and I think I mentioned this in at least one video for last year in 2011, and I think I mentioned it in the review for, excuse me, I think I mentioned it in the review for the update in that video, that, they're like, okay, well, they thought they were going to open in January, then it ended up being February, and then it ended up being March. They finally got it all together and got open in May of this year in their new spot where they are now. Well, they've been there ever since, and, I mean, it's like they're open 6 days a week, and they're closed on Sundays. So, like, if you decide you need a pizza, and it's Sunday, don't order from Renero's, because they'll be closed. But, they're definitely open 6 days a week, and sometimes they even have a live band in there. which is interesting. Well, the next restaurant review was the second update about Guys and Dolls. Tony and I actually went in there on May 18th, and we had just a really rotten experience there. It was just, like the food was cold, and there was one poor waitress busting her ass, and she was working the whole room. It was like the entire restaurant. It was her, just one waitress, and she was working the entire floor by herself. And I felt horrible for her. I was like, seriously, it's like I think it would be a lot better if they hired in like at least one other waitress. Seriously, to be fair to this poor girl. But I also made a comment about, they, should do bar rescue or restaurant rescue or something like that. Well, it was too little too late. And I mean, it was awful. So about a month later, well, it was more than a month later, it was, in July, I shot the third and final update on Guys and Dolls. In the third update, I talked about the fact that Guys and Dolls was finally closed. In the first update in February, I had said I wouldn't be surprised if they closed, just because I could tell it was going down the tubes with a vengeance. At the second time we went in there where we actually ate, oh, it was a horrible experience. I mean, the worst part of it all when we went in there and actually ate in May was the fact that, they had karaoke that night. It was the worst experience I ever heard. It was like, row, 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 row. Oh, it was horrible. I was like, it is like, I just wanted to lay down and die. It was just awful. I mean, and I made a comment in the video back in May. I said, I made a crack on Facebook about the fact that, I'd pay money for like Billy Joel or Billy Idol to get up there and sing, because I would rather listen to them sing than this drunken lot, that was there. It was awful. But anyway, the restaurant Guys and Dolls finally, and I mentioned this in the third and final update about Guys and Dolls, they finally closed on June 21st of this year, 2012. Well, I actually noticed it on June 28th, 29th, because, I was coming home from work kind of early that day, because Tony and I were going out of town to General Butler to stay the weekend. Well, what wound up happening is, well, I just happened to notice they were closed. And that there was a for sale sign out in the yard. Well, in a further update, and I'll say it now, 6 months later, they still haven't sold the place. I mean, it's literally 6 months to the day that I noticed it. They still haven't sold it. There's still a for sale sign out in the yard. There's snow in the parking lot. There's snow in the building. You can tell that it's obviously not in use. And, it's just, I find it ironic that, it's like they can't keep restaurants in there. And I've said that before. And I said to Tony, I think that, if like Aladdin went in there, they'd be busier in a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. Maybe. But on the other hand, any restaurant that's ever went in there has failed. But Aladdin is like insane busy all the flicking time. And it's like, really. I mean, it's like I halfway wonder what would happen if they did go in there. But, of course, Aladdin's, if you'll remember, and I talked about them, I think, last year in 2011. They're over here where jalapenos used to be. And they, in fact, inherited jalapenos furniture. And, that brings up something ironic. Tony and I were in Lexington over in September. And we were down there on, like, the corner of 27 and something. And don't you know there was another jalapenos down there? Tony and I didn't go in and eat, but we, pointed and laughed and said, Don't you know it's like the irony of it, really. Well, anyway, that aside, um, the next restaurant review I talked about Silver Grove Dairy Bar. It's down there in Silver Grove on Kentucky 8 or Mary Ingalls Highway. It's really good, but it's only open during the summer and is cash only. So it's just because you do outside eating. I wouldn't go down there now in the middle of December because, they're probably not open, and if you sat outside and ate, you'd probably freeze your ass off. I know me personally, I am just like a heat fiend. I like to be hot, and, it's like, I mean, not so hot that, like, I pass out, but, I like to be, you know, like in 80-degree weather and no humidity. And it be nice and sunny and pretty. That's like my ideal life, you know. But, I can't complain, because I have to have the cold with the hot, And like I mentioned before in that first video I shot earlier tonight, it is colder in a well digger's butt outside. And I mean, it's snowing and it's cold, 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 cold. And, just as an aside, I just want to reiterate it here. I mean, it wouldn't be, worth even eating at the Sulphur Grove Dairy Bar tonight for nothing. I mean, and if we ate out at all tonight, Tony and I would so go eat it like somewhere we could sit inside and it'd be like, at least a good sporting chance of it being warm. I mean, really. But, the next restaurant, oh, wait, I almost forgot. Back to Sulphur Grove Dairy Bar. I forgot to mention that this year in 2012 was the Sulphur Grove Dairy Bar's 60th year in being open. I think that's great. I did then too, and that's another one of those restaurants that I did a review on this phone with. You know, and you know, the video is kind of dark in a couple of spots just because, it was evening when Tony and I went down there, and the lighting isn't exactly the best down there because they're kind of stingy on the lights down there with everything, the street lights and everything. But, I mean, excuse me, you can see successfully enough to see what you're eating. But, anyway, the next restaurant review I did was an update on BW3s. Because they all of a sudden, like Guys and Dolls, closed. We're like, really? Because it was like random. That one was doing okay, but like, we didn't expect to see it close because it was like every once in a while, like we'd go in there and it'd be so dang packed that we were like, no. And we'd actually leave and go eat like at Renero's or whatever. And, like the night that I shot that video again on this phone, I mean, we talked about that, and it was funny, that on that video, like if you watch the one where I talk about the BW3s, there was a comment initially made on the page that, has since been deleted, but the, guy had made a comment to the effect of, yeah, like I saw you, blah, 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 and I'm really sorry about that. And on a related note to that as well, I talked about him in a separate video that's not on the restaurant review playlist where I was talking about, meeting the people from the Cincinnati Public Library that likes watching my videos. And if you guys are watching, and I'm sure you are, hi, thank you for your continued viewership. I do still appreciate that, just as a side note. If you made it this far, hi. But yeah, I just, because that happened all about the same time. In case you're wondering what I'm talking about here, and this is just as an aside, I, during the summer, went to the Cincinnati Public Library on the corner of Vine and 8th. Well, that's the corner I go to get in there. But what happened is, this one day I was sitting up there in the Cincinnati reading room, thumbing through, this Excel book and like monkeying around on this computer, and this lady comes up to me and says, are you, she's in Kentucky, and I'm like, I look at her and I'm like, yeah, why? And it's like my brain was like, I'm like, looking at the book, looking at the computer, looking at the book, looking at, my brain's like busy, trying to focus on what I'm doing. She said, I would like to shake your hand. And I'm like, okay. She said, I love your videos. And I'm like, thank you. And it was like, like I said in the video that I shot about that, I'm like, I mean, it's not that, I was raised with something that passes for manners. It's just, my mind was like a million miles away. And it's just like later on, we ended up getting pictures taken and stuff and all. And I do want to thank them again for, watching, but, it just kind of, my brain went, what? It was like one of those things, where my brain was like off somewhere, and I wasn't thinking, and it's, I do want to wish them a Happy New Year and hope they had a Merry Christmas. And I'll probably be back up there, I'd say, probably in March, once it starts warming up, because I don't do the cold weather very well, and I don't want to be dragging this laptop through icy streets in Cincinnati. Thank you. Well, anyway, that aside, back to the restaurant reviews. Speaking of warm weather, Tony and I went to Lexington September the 8th through the 14th of this year of 2012. While we were down there, on the 8th of September, Tony and I stopped and we ate at the Joseph-beth bookstore, the Bronte's Bistro down there in Lexington. Well, and I've talked about this before. There's been a few trolls that have made a comment about me needing to eat salads and blah, 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 and what have you. Well, and I mentioned this in that video. I'm like, something? I ate a salad. I ate a spinach salad that day with turkey and walnuts and or feta cheese, and I forget what the dressing was to this day. I still don't know. I mean, I took a picture of it just so I could, order that again if I ever go back down there. But yeah, seriously though, it was extremely good, and we were sitting there waiting on Mom and Dad to call us and say, okay, you can come meet us now, because Mom and Dad were letting us borrow their camper, because we were camping down there at the Kentucky Horse Park, for the, for our anniversary and stuff. Well, I had a good time in the Bronte Bistro. It was really good. The waitress was fine. I had no problems with her. It was perfectly good food. And I would recommend going in that Joseph-beth, and eating, because, I mean, it's like an actual restaurant inside that particular Joseph-beth. It was really good. And I mean, like, I used this laptop and I charged this phone up with the laptop like I'm doing now, because, as I've mentioned before, and this is another aside, this cell phone goes through so much more juice than my little cell phone that I've let Tony use since his phone kind of went kaput last week. I mean, what was crazy, and I want to talk about this, and this has got a lot to do with that last restaurant review at the Hoffer House. I went to take a photo of Tony with his cell phone, and all of a sudden my hands got slick, and, I almost broke his cell phone, but it shorted out, like, right as I was, like, I'm like this, and went to, take a photo, stupid thing shorted, I dropped, it kind of went like this, and I went, I caught it, but the thing shorted out, and quit working. But, it had been doing that prior to that happening, though. That's the thing. I didn't break it, just for the record. I want to say that now, but, Tony and I, we went in there, and, I mean, I beat this phone to the point where the battery actually died on it, and I needed to let it charge up enough, while we were in Joseph-beth as well, to allow us to use the GPS that I have on this phone to get to the horse park from the Bronte Bistro and Joseph-beth. So, I'm in there horsing around on Facebook on this laptop and charging this phone up at the same time, because you can actually, if you look real close, there's a black like square on here with a yellow arrow. That's the app for the GPS. It's right next to the Open Table app that I keep talking about here. Um, an Open Table, and I want to talk about that here now. Open Table is a really good app on here, and I've said it before. I'll say it again. I mean, it's great because it's like it really comes in handy. Like, Tony and I made a reservation for, Buca de Beppo, which I talk about, in one of my restaurant reviews. And I'll get to that in a second. You know, um, for Thanksgiving. And it also feeds into this next restaurant that I'm talking about here, Bella Notte. It's down the street from the Joseph-beth that we ate at on the 8th. It's like on 27. We joked about that, Tony and I did. Because, as I've mentioned before, US 27 goes from like Detroit, Michigan, down through this area and all the way down to like somewhere in Florida. I mean, I was actually on 27 in Florida. I've also been on 27 in Michigan. I'm not joking. 27 goes up here through Cincinnati and everything, and down through Newport, through part of Fort Thomas, through Southgate, and then it comes down here through Highland Heights into Cold Spring, and then down there into Alexandria and on south. We couldn't find. We had a horrible time finding the entrance to Bella Notte, but we eventually found it and we enjoyed it. And our waitress down there was just, we just absolutely loved her to pieces. She was awesome. I can't remember the girl's name now either, but I do strongly recommend using Open Table and going to Bella Notte. They're actually better than Olive Garden. I mean, and I like Olive Garden just fine, but Bella Notte was just amazing. Tony and I went there for our anniversary on September the 10th. And I'd made a reservation in advance, so that way I could make sure that we were guaranteed a seat. It wasn't busy in there at that time either. It started getting busy after we got there, and had been there for 20-30 minutes. And we told the waitress why we were there. We're like, we're here celebrating an anniversary, our wedding anniversary, and she gave us a piece of free cheesecake, which, believe me, she didn't have to do that, and we weren't expecting it, but we appreciated it anyway. And, I mean, I would definitely go back there if we ever go to Lexington. And in fact, after I shot the video for, Bella Notte, I actually recommended it to a friend of mine who is a huge, huge UK fan. Her and her whole family is big UK fans. And I told her, I said, well, it's down there in Lexington. I said, the service is amazing. I said, and, the food's pretty good, too, if you like Italian food. And I said, our little waitress that we had, we just loved her to pieces. She was just great. I mean, Tony and I do like Italian food. I mean, Tony doesn't like it as much as he likes Mexican food, but he does like Italian food. And, back to us, being on that vacation, in September, there's kind of a restaurant review embedded in me talking about the distilleries that Tony and I went to while we were on vacation in September. And it's called the Firehouse Cafe. The Firehouse Cafe is located at Buffalo Trace Distillery, and it's an open air cafe thing, or it was when Tony and I were there during September. And it was really, really good. It was catered food. Tony got, I think, hot dogs or conies or something, which he said were good. I got a brownie, and I got a turkey croissant sandwich, which was pretty good. And we both got root beer. And, the root beer was in, a dark bottle. Not this big, like this Dad's root beer, but it was a dark bottle like this, but it was like the glass beer bottle. looked like a bottle of beer. Well, I showed, this is a funny thing, I showed Mom the picture that Tony had taken of me, and I'm sitting there, like this, and I'm holding the, bottle of root beer or whatever. And Mom's like, are you drinking beer? And I'm like, sort of. I'm drinking a root beer, totally legal stuff. I could take a 4-year-old in there into a, gas station and give the 4-year-old pocket money and tell the 4-year-old to go buy, some root beer, and I'm sure a 4-year-old kid could get it without a problem, but anyway, that aside, Tony and I really enjoyed eating at that Buffalo Trace restaurant. So like if you ever decide to go do the Bourbon Trail, go to Buffalo Trace and, eat at their, Firehouse Cafe. And the Welcome Center is just amazing too. We had the best time there. And as a matter of fact, and this goes into what I mentioned in the last video about Tony's birthday, and me giving him the first photo album from our vacation. You're gonna think this is sick, but Tony and I, with my camera that broke when we were at Buffalo Trace, we ended up taking almost 2,000 photos. It wasn't quite, it was like 1,937 photos from September the 8th through the 14th. And, we ate at Buffalo Trace on the 13th. So, it went clear through, and it tore up right at Buffalo Trace, right as we were getting ready to leave. It was like this, black speck that ended up inside the, lens where I couldn't get rid of it. So, it tore up, and then it, whatever. Well, anyway, I do recommend, the Buffalo Trace and, Wild Turkey and everything as well. And if you can get on the Hard Hat tour, I do highly recommend it. That was so fun at Buffalo Trace. Now, as far as, back up here, Tony and I eventually went and ate at Dunker's Sports Bar. They replaced BW3's. And we actually enjoyed it. They're actually, got a lot more televisions. The staff is actually pretty good. The food's decent. It's nothing like BW3's ever was. It's not even close. And it's locally owned. It's the only one of its kind in the area. So like if you're looking for a one-of-a-kind restaurant and you're in the Northern Kentucky area, go eat at BW3's. Go eat at Dunker's. They're where BW3's used to be, on Martha Lane Collins. If you're not sure of where it is, well, there's videos. Trust me. You can go look at where where I talk about the BW3's and it used to be there. This place is right there, right in the middle of that mall. But anyway, speaking of, the folks at the library that I mentioned earlier in this video, Tony took me up in October to drop off some books to the library, the Cincinnati library. Well, on the way, when we got done doing that, Tony and I went and ate at the Istanbul Cafe, which is on, it's on Vine Street, south of the library. It's on the, between, I'd say, 6th and 7th Street and Vine. It's on Vine, but it's between or no, it's more it's between 5th and 6th maybe, but it's definitely, south of the library. Tony and I enjoyed it. It's a little on the expensive side, and it's a small restaurant, and it's a BYOB restaurant, which, means bring your own bottle. They don't sell alcohol there. They don't, but if they do, I can't remember, but it's more I take that back. They don't sell alcohol. You are allowed to bring your own, wine or beer or whatever, and they'll open it up for you, but, they don't actually sell it to you. You have to bring your own bottle. And that's a big thing for them. And their food was good. Tony loved it. It was just all Tony talked about was, I want to go eat at Istanbul Cafe. I don't want to go eat at Istanbul Cafe. Fine. I took him to Istanbul Cafe in October, and he, to hush him up, and it hushed him up. He's like, okay, that's fine. I mean, we may or may not go back there. I'm not sure. Jury's still out on that one. But anyway, the next restaurant the review that I did was last month at Buca di Beppo. There, I mentioned this previously about Open Table and everything. Tony and I used Open Table for my birthday in June, where we went to Mitchell's Fish Market, which came in handy because it was I think a 30-minute wait otherwise, and it was like cutting in line. It was great. And then, we used it for Bella Notte in September. Well, for Thanksgiving, Tony and I decided to go eat at Buca di Beppo because, well, as I mentioned in the video when I was talking about Buca, Tony worked 8 to 4 on Thanksgiving last month in November. And, well, by the time Tony got home, changed clothes, blah, 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 so on and so forth, we're talking, us being completely ready to hit it at 6. Well, at the earliest, and well, at that point, all the people that, wanted us to come up, it's like at that point they would have been like, okay, go home. We didn't want to go eat picked over, cold, sat out for heaven knows how long, turkey and stuff. We wanted something fresh, and hot and ready to go, instead. So we ended up eating at Buca di Beppo. Tony and I made the reservation on, Open Table, which I've mentioned before. I half think that I made the reservation actually on this computer, because, it was for Thanksgiving, and it was just kind of last minute. I mean, it was literally last minute, because the person, or the people we were supposed to eat with, flaked out on us last minute, pretty much 2-3 days before. And we're like, really? And, we're like, forget it. You know what? Be that way, fine. Go do whatever it was you wanted to go do and be a snot about it. Fine. Just be that way. And we're like, whatever. So we ended up eating at Buca di Beppo, and I'm glad we did. We really enjoyed it. Our waitress was just, she was great, and the food was great. We got shrimp fra diavolo, and the waitress's name was Chelsea. She was just great, and of course, and I didn't mention this in the video because this hadn't happened yet, but Tony and I went back to Buca on the 22nd of this month, which was last Saturday. And we went there with Tony's friend Dave. This was the first time he'd ever eaten in there. Well, what's funny is we ended up getting Chelsea again, which was just crazy funny. I mean, we looked at her and said, you know what, we got you on Thanksgiving. I said, and we loved you when we were here on Thanksgiving. We told her that. We praised her to her face, I do still recommend Buca. And Tony, Dave, and I split a salad. And then we got one of those big bowls of shrimp Florentine. It was good. I mean, it actually fed the three of us. I mean, considering that Dave, eats for a skinny guy as Dave is, he eats like a field hand. I mean, he woofed, we split that thing evenly, a third, a third, a third. And for $32, it was worth it, because I mean, you split $32 three ways. It's $10 or something a person, which is pretty good, all things considered. I mean, that's cheap, relatively speaking, And I mean, we just really loved it. And of course, I want to talk again about the 2 restaurant reviews that I just did tonight. Now, I want to talk about the Beef O'Brady's. The Beef O'Brady's, I don't know why I didn't think to make that restaurant review sooner. I had my head up my butt, and I had other issues going on in my life over the summer, and I was in a particularly evil mood half the time. You know, so it is what it is. But yeah, seriously though, I mean, the restaurant, or, well, it's like, the videos of, us in there, like I mentioned in the restaurant review, it was shot on this phone, and it was like, this, because, we had some dum-dums that were behind me being dum-dums and everything. But yeah, uh, it's worth going down there to Newport and eating there at Beef Over 80s. In fact, it wasn't even crowded when we were in there. I mean, it was dead. I mean, it was like us and the table behind me that were being stupid. But I would recommend going back in there again. And then, of course, there's the Hoffer House. The restaurant review I did right before this, rehashed video. Um, you know, yeah. Actually, I'll show you what the gift certificate looked like, because we have another one here. Um, we actually, let me get this here, because I put this on the fridge so I wouldn't lose it. We got two of them. The one we already used, but this one is the second one that we have. Now we'll probably use this one when we go. If we go later. You can only use these at restaurant.com, from restaurant.com. Once, it says it right on here, it's only one restaurant-specific gift certificate may be redeemed per party, per month, per restaurant, even if the party is seated at separate tables and or receives more than one check. It's also not valid for taxes, tips, merchandise, or prior balances. And it can't be combined with any other promotions, coupons, or special offers. And it's valid only for dine-in. So it is what it is. But yeah, Tony and I really enjoyed eating there earlier this month. I mean, like I said, we only had like the real problem with the hostess staff being a bit on the slow side, if you know what I mean. Well, anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. I know this video is kind of long, but, considering what I've been talking about in this video, it is what it is. Anyway, I do want to tell you, if I have any other additional comments to make, which I don't think Tony and I are going to do any more eating out at, like, fancy pants restaurants to where I do a restaurant review. At least not until January. I'll let you guys know. But I do want to thank you all for watching this long honkin' video, and I hope you all had a Merry Christmas on Tuesday, the 25th. And I hope you all have a Happy New Year. Thanks for watching. Bye.